Hello loves, it's Britt, and in this video I wanted to talk about what it means to have your Venus opposite to someone's Pluto in Synastry, the relationship chart comparison, or vice versa, to have your Pluto opposite to someone's Venus. So I want to actually go through and do like each aspect individually, but I wanted to start with the opposition because this is the one that I feel like I've had the most experience with in my life. And I've also had the square though, so that one will come next. Um, so this opposition in Synastry creates this fascination with each other. So when I have had this, and I've had it multiple times, it has created for me that feeling of like love at first sight. Like when you see someone and your soul is just like stunned or shocked at the intensity of attraction and powerful feeling that is activated. So you can only have this aspect with certain people because of, the slowness of Pluto's orbit, right? So for me, with Venus in Aries, I've only had it, I've only been able to have it with someone else's Pluto, with the Pluto in Libra generation, at around 19 degrees of Libra, because my Venus is at 19 degrees of Aries. Now, I can have it, more commonly with people that have Venus at 29 degrees of Taurus, because my Pluto is at 29 degrees of Scorpio. So you have to look at the degrees, because you won't be able to have this aspect that commonly, like with that many people when it's their Pluto, because Pluto is such a slow orbit. So like, for example, if you had like Venus in, I'm trying to think, let's say you have Venus in Scorpio, you would only be able to have someone's Pluto opposite to your Venus if they had Pluto in Taurus, and I believe that I don't know the exact dates on that, but I do not think those people are alive right now because of the slowness of Pluto's orbit. So you have to look at it like that. But so depending on where your Pluto is though yourself, so you could have Venus in Scorpio, but maybe you have Pluto in Libra, so then people with Venus in Aries could have their Venus opposite your Pluto, depending on the degree. So this aspect can actually be very good and very healing. So the opposition aspect in Synastry can be very good. The reason being is that it creates that level of polarity. So there's a lot of talk right now, and I don't really follow most of it, but some of it is kind of good, I feel like, and some of it is maybe a little bit distorted. But there's a lot of talk right now, at least on my social media feeds and that, about masculine and feminine polarity. And like, men being in their masculine and women being in their feminine and blah, blah, blah. I think that, it doesn't really matter who's being who, but that kind of talk is like the representation of the opposition aspect, right? When we meet our opposing, other half, like our opposite sign, and the healing that can go on there because of that polarity. It's like, we just fit like this, right? And so when it's Venus, the love planet, how we love, what we find pleasurable, and, that part of our heart that is to do with, all things pleasurable and good and loving, when we have that in opposition to someone's Pluto, which is like this powerful force, sometimes even like this shadow or darker compulsive force in someone's personality, it creates this effect of like the Venus person and the Pluto person really feeling like they've found their other half. Like they feel like they could have possibly met their match. And that's something to be said about the opposition aspect, is that it can create that feeling of like that's my person, or that's my other half, because of the polarity. And it's like the signs merge to create one whole, right? Like Aries is deficient in Libra, right? Sometimes. And Libra is deficient in Aries. And so when they come together in the opposition, it can be this very soul merging feeling. And with Venus and Pluto, it can be very sexual. It can be, very much like we've met our sexual other half. The Pluto person feels like the Venus person is like so sexually attractive, and their body and their way of expressing love is just like exactly what the Pluto person needs on some level, although it may also be triggering for them too, because Pluto is, it is sort of a fearful part of us, right? Where, we have to look at that, and it's where we are a bit insecure, right? So the Venus person can also trigger the Pluto person, trigger fear and a desire to like own the Venus person. Like they want, they love that sensuality, they love that body of the Venus person, they love their love, but they want to have that to themselves. Like they see that, and they're jealous at that way that Venus expresses herself or himself, depending on who's who here, right? And so that can come out. It depends on the people involved. Like we could have other Uranus aspects going on in the synastry and the composite chart that's going to lessen that feeling of ownership that the Pluto person might have. But in, general relationships, sometimes there is a little bit of that going on, right? And that desire to possess and to own Venus, that is like the desire of the man to put his baby in her, or put a ring on her finger, and like lock her down, right? And so it can be like, that can be kind of normal, that can be kind of comforting actually for the Venus person, to feel wanted and claimed in this powerful way. But the emphasis on the word powerful, there is not a lot lighthearted about this connection. We could have other things going on like Jupiter and Uranus that will make this more fun and lighthearted. I've had it like that. But on some level, even with anything else going on, with this Pluto opposition Venus in the synastry, there is this undercurrent of intensity and depth, and like this knowing on the part of both people that this is going to be a relationship that will drastically alter the entire course of your life. And it's not lighthearted, it's not easy, it's not casual. It's very hard for this to feel like a casual relationship or an affair, because it's just so not. They just both feel so powerfully for each other. And if it does end up being like a more casual affair situation, it's because one person cannot handle the intensity of the emotions that this contact brings up. Okay, because you have to look at the people involved. Like this level of intensity when we have Pluto contacts can scare the F out of somebody, right? Like scare the shit out of them. Like it's scary, right? Because you have to look at things, you have to look at emotions, you have to deal with your inner being here. This is kind of like, this aspect can be like a outer self meets inner self, right? We've got Venus and maybe her outer beauty meeting Pluto, and at this deep part where Pluto has to really go within and look at their deeper self being triggered by Venus's outer self. And then it can switch. The thing with the opposition aspect too is that there can be a bit of a switch that happens where it can start out where, maybe Venus is really triggered by Pluto, and Pluto hasn't really noticed Venus yet. Well, they probably noticed Venus. They notice Venus. Right off the bat, they notice Venus. They probably noticed Venus first. But they didn't allow themselves to go there yet, because they just were not ready. So they pretended like they didn't notice Venus, right? And so Venus can be feeling really obsessed with Pluto. Like, wow, like I remember when I've met men with their Pluto opposite my Venus, and I just felt like, wow, that is the most attractive man I've ever seen in my entire life. And I don't know what it is, but I have to know him. I have to love him. I have to get in bed with him immediately. Like, this is how it can feel. So there can be that. And then what can happen is that it can switch, where then Pluto catches on, and then Pluto feels the exact same way. And then maybe Venus switches off and thinks, you know what, that's a little too intense for me, or vice versa. And this can kind of go back and forth with this aspect. But the difference between this aspect and other Pluto synastry aspects is the amount of love that is there. So Venus is not an indifferent planet. Pluto is not an indifferent planet. Sometimes when we have Mars Pluto, we can have a lot of intensity, but not love. Like it can be passion, it can be sexual with Mars Pluto, but without Venus, and there could be other things going on with Venus that would add to the love, but like just talking about that one specific aspect, or Sun Pluto, it's not love. It's intensity, it's attraction, it's sex, it's very powerful, but it's not love. But with Venus Pluto, it is love. Okay, it's a deep, soul consuming and sometimes soul crushing love, right? I had this with my late husband. Like, he died and he left me on this planet alone with our son without that love. So it felt like that love got cut off from me. It was like the most pain I've ever felt in my entire life, and the deepest love that I've ever felt in my entire life. And actually, through the grieving process, I've grown to be this new version of myself that I actually like better than the version I was when he was alive. So that's a very extreme example. Now, not everybody with this aspect is going to actually go through the physical loss and departure of their partner. But it is also a perfect representation of Venus-Pluto, because Pluto can represent death, the underworld. It can represent actual physical death. The 8th house can represent death, but usually it represents ego deaths and transformations, right? So what I went through is an extreme example, but also a good example nonetheless of the intensity of this kind of love, where you will die. And I died too. I died to old versions of myself and became reborn to more powerful expressions of my Venus. And also there's other aspects going on too. So my sun too, and other planets. But so this relationship can completely change you. And, before I was with my late husband, I was with another man whose Pluto was opposite my Venus also. It was like my Pluto in the 8th house in Scorpio needed to learn this lesson of Venus-Pluto. And I needed that transformation that can only come from this type of intense plutonic relationship. And so I've got it. And the other relationship ended via his departure as well, except he did not die. He just stopped dating me. So different but same, really. I mean, no, it's totally different, because I have this deep spiritual bond with my love in spirit that I do not have with this other physical man who is living. Although I'm sure there's a soul love, it's not quite the same. But anyway, so that can be common with this type of relationship, where there is a heartbreak or there's something very intense and painful about it. It doesn't have to be, though. Like, I could really see this working out in a long-term relationship if both the people are up for it, right? And I think it's Jill Mayberry that said this, but she said that, and it might have not been her, but I think it was her, because she's like the best person to talk about synastry and composite charts and stuff like that. But she said that, like, it is a natural opposition of Venus and Pluto, right? Because Venus rules Taurus, right? And Taurus is opposite Scorpio, and Pluto rules Scorpio. So when we have this opposition, we are getting to have that natural exchange between those two planets, right? Because they are naturally in opposition because of the Taurus-Scorpio polarity. So the Taurus-Scorpio polarity, whether we're actually having this opposition in the signs of Taurus-Scorpio or not, the Taurus-Scorpio polarity is something to be learned here with this aspect. So Taurus is like the material and, you know, the body and, you know, more like casual expression of love at times. Taurus can be pretty simplistic people, right? And also the financial aspect of this aspect. This aspect can have a financial undertone as well. If either, you know, someone's resources are involved or they acquire wealth together, there is a financial undertone with this energy as well because of this opposition. So, or they're fighting over resources in a long divorce situation or other situation that can be seen with this. So, yeah, and then Scorpio is that more intense level of love, that depth and sexual intimacy and connection and soul transforming death and rebirth love, right? And other people's money, right? So we got our own money, Taurus, other people's money, Scorpio. Now those are just generalizations, right? But those are just, you know, some of what the sign represents, right? So with this aspect, we have some of that going on. We are balancing that, okay? It's a second, 8th house thing going on here. So it will not leave you the way you were. You will be transformed. And if you exist in a long-term relationship, the passion, the intensity, the transformation, it will always be there. And that can be a very good thing because you're always going to feel powerful feelings. Now, they can also turn into powerful feelings of hatred, because that's the other thing about the opposition aspect is, you know, sometimes we really hate that shadow side of us, that projection, that other side of us that we feel that we lack. It's actually a part of our shadow. It's actually a part of us that needs to be integrated, right? Like Taurus needs Scorpio and Scorpio needs Taurus, but sometimes they're just gonna hate each other and just want to fight it out, you know, and then maybe have passionate makeup sex, right? So all of this is a potential here with this aspect, and it is a deep soul love, and I do feel that it's a soulmate aspect. It's a relationship that's come into your life to totally transform you in every way, and it may be difficult to find a love that would ever equal this level of intensity. And maybe, you know, you will find it, but this will be a memorable one. And I'd like to just take all the words like good and bad out of your vocabulary, out of my vocabulary, and see it for what it is. It's growth, it's learning, it's transformation, it's passion, it's death, it's rebirth, it's power, it's sexual intensity and fascination. Yeah. So, yeah, I had to share on this one. I'm also going to talk about the square. I've had the square too with my other soulmate in my life, my first love, or one of my first loves. And I like to draw on actual personal experience when I do these, although, you know, it's not like I haven't had every aspect, but I feel like, you know, the astrologers that are the most powerful is when they can actually relate it to their life or their clients. So that's, you know, how it's worked out for me. And of course, everybody has their own different birth chart. It's going to work out differently for everybody. But generally, these are some themes that we're going to see with this one. And hey, I'm a big fan. I love it. I have gone through hell and back with this aspect. And would I take it back? Nope, never. Because I have become the person that I am today. And yeah, I have a new spiritual mission birthed with my late husband, and it is to do with this kind of stuff. So the pain that this aspect can bring can lead you to a greater purpose, even if it does feel like it's destroying you in the process. You are just being reborn, and that's what we have to remember with kind of plutonic relationships, right? Is that, okay, it can feel like you're dying, but it's because a new part of you is being reborn. And people that are more plutonic in nature are going to understand that more than others. But yeah, this one will transform you. The level of intensity and love and passion and soulmate feelings is almost unbeatable. I mean, the conjunction would also contain that level of it too. But this one, we really feel like we've met our match, and we have, because of that polarity. We need what they represent, and depending on how much we're able to allow ourselves to be transformed will be how much we enjoy this one or not. So yeah, I hope this was helpful and made some sense. I'd also love to hear your guys' experience on this aspect if you've had it in Synastry. It's a life-changing one for sure. So anyways, I'll be back soon. I do offer one-on-one sessions. I do Synastry sessions where we can talk about this, and also the composite chart of your relationship. And then I also do personal natal chart sessions as well, where we go deep into your own unique soul purpose. Okay, thanks for watching, you guys. Love you.